Do you know how to run a successful networking meeting or land a corporate sponsor? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV. And this week, my special guests are Linda Hollander, the corporate sponsorship concierge, and Nathan Perez, all about the 20-minute networking meeting. It's all here on YouTube, Guys TV, and you can also catch me on my worldwide podcast and KCAA radio show, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, the interview portion of our show. I've got a very special guest whose work is near and dear to me because I'm a podcaster and I'm a radio announcer and I'm a YouTube guy, and I'm always looking for sponsorships. And I've got the expert, the world expert, Linda Hollander is with us today. She's been featured in Inc. magazine. She's a leading expert on corporate sponsorship. She teaches entrepreneurs how to tap into the awesome power of corporate sponsorship. So listen up, everybody. Linda really can help out. She's the author of the #1 bestseller, Corporate Sponsorship in 3 Easy Steps. She's CEO of Sponsorship Concierge, and her sponsors are an all-star team of brands: Microsoft, Epson, Wells Fargo, Dun & Bradstreet, FedEx, American Airlines, Walmart, Marriott, IBM, and the list goes on. And she has been called or quoted as, from Al Lapkin, who is the CEO and founder, I believe, of IHOP. He said, if your goal is to be a success, Linda Hollander has paved the way for you. So welcome to Guys Radio, Linda Hollander.
Hey, great to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. So why don't we just start right at the beginning, because you have so much information to share with our listeners, and there's so many podcasters and wannabe podcasters out there now, and also just people who have their own businesses, and there's so much going on and so much remote work, etc. How did you get started in the sponsorship area?
Well, I got started because I wanted to do an event, and it was a live event. It was about, I've been in this business for over 20 years, and anybody who's ever done a live event knows that it is not cheap. You look at your costs and you say, oh my God, especially if you want to do a first class event. And that's what I wanted to do. Basically, I started a business, and all the good things in my life happened when I started that business. I was able to move out of my little rent controlled apartment. I was able to buy my first home as a single woman. I was able to quit a job where I had an abrasive relationship with my boss, and it was a very toxic work situation. I was able to pay down this debt that was absolutely choking me. And really, I was working at a job, but not making enough money. So I borrowed on credit cards. And as you know, that puts you in a really, really bad situation. It was so great. I was able to travel the world when I started my business. I was able, most importantly, to get out of an abusive relationship that I was in with a man. So I wanted to show other women how to do it. So I wanted to start a women's small business expo. I started looking at how much it would take to produce it. And I said, well, I don't have the money. Who has the money? And that's when I found out about corporate sponsors. Now, here's what corporate sponsors will fund. Corporate sponsors will fund your business. They'll fund your podcast. They'll fund your show, your book, if you want to write a book, your speaking, if you want to do virtual events, live events, if you have a nonprofit, or any project that you have, like a documentary film, can be funded with corporate sponsors. So I started contacting them for my event. Now, I think it's important for everybody to know that I'd never done an event in my life. I had no fan base. I had no following, except for my brother-in-law and my cat. And I got my first sponsors were Bank of America, Walmart, and IBM. After that, I got Microsoft, Staples, FedEx. I got Marriott Hotels, American Airlines, and really it set me on a trajectory. So people said, well, how the heck are you doing this? And that's when I said, well, I've got to teach people how to get corporate sponsors, because really people don't know that you could do it if you're just starting out. You could do it on concept. And so that's what I do now, is coaching, consulting, and events to show people how to tap into the awesome power of corporate sponsors.
Okay. Did you have all those sponsors at the same time? I mean, building one on top of the other, or did you have them individually? Because, sometimes you have a featured sponsor or a sole sponsor, and you have like a who's who of brand names there.
Yeah, they weren't all at the same time, except For that first event, I did have Bank of America, Walmart, and IBM. And
Okay.
that's what we tell people, get as many sponsors as possible because it puts you in a much better financial position to have more sponsors. And there's no limit to the number of sponsors you can have.
Now you talk about events a lot, and I've taken your workshop, and it's fantastic. By the way, everybody, check it out. We'll get into the details on that later. But um, a lot of folks don't have events. Are events, what's the difference between the type of businesses where an event makes sense and some of the businesses where you don't need events, but you could still use a sponsor?
You don't need to do events. If we look at the major social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the new players like TikTok, they live online and their whole business model is corporate sponsorship. So you could do something that lives online like a podcast or a show, or you could be a social influencer. Right now, you could do virtual speaking, you could do virtual book tours. You do not need to do an event to get sponsors.
And the corporate sponsors will they be interested in sponsoring folks who are doing things on social media? Or obviously remote is a big thing now. So kind of a two-part question. Will corporate sponsors be willing to sponsor you through social media? And two, what's happening with the whole move to remote? Because it's not going away. It's going to get bigger and bigger. It's part of our lives now.
Let's talk about social media. Social media is so important in the world of sponsorship now. That is good news because social media, as you know, is very inexpensive. It's no cost or low cost to you. If you hire a team, it's not that expensive. So social media is very important in the promotion, and it's also important in measuring your demographic. So with social media, you know the gender, you know the income range, you know the age range of the people who are listening to you. So that's really, really important. Let's talk about virtual because virtual, you're right, is here to stay. We are never going back to a pre-COVID world. You really need to master virtual and digital marketing to be successful today in the world of sponsorships.
Okay. How can people best identify the type of sponsors that fit their brand?
Demographics are destiny. It's all about your audience. So when I was first getting started, remember, I had no following, but I researched the women's business market. I found out that women business owners are a $4.8 trillion market. That's what women spend in America on their businesses. Women are starting businesses at twice the rate of men, and women make or influence over 85% of the purchasing decisions in America. I found this information in under 30 minutes by just going to Google. And that's what you can do. Even if you're just getting started, research the potential market that you have. And that's what you present to your sponsors. Now, think of the daily lifestyle of this person. Let's take the woman business owner.
Okay.
She brushes her teeth, she washes her hair, she gets into a car, she has a banking relationship. She has a personal life where she shops for food and beverage and consumer goods. So all of those categories are good. So that's how you're going to identify your potential sponsors.
Um, what's the mistake that people make when we're starting out? Because, having written two books and I got one published and the other one I didn't, I made the mistake in the first one. I learned how to write the book, but I started sending it out too early. So when I got into this sponsorship area, I took your course and I waited. I said, I need 2 more years to really build my brand. What are some of the mistakes that people make? Do they send out incorrect information? Do they go out there too early? Give us some examples, Linda.
I don't think there's such a thing as going out there too early. People like to wait because they think there's these magic numbers like, okay, when I get this many followers, when I do this, when I do that, I'll be ready. Nuh-uh. Do it ASAP because it takes a while to get sponsors. It's a relationship business. So I don't really think you need to wait. Another mistake is not charging enough money because if you charge too little, basically what you're doing is you're telling your sponsors you have nothing of value and it's not worth their time. Sponsorship is a team sport. So it's not just one person that makes that decision. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And they have to consult colleagues and their boss and people on their team. So it has to be a good amount of money for it to be worth their time to look at what you do, evaluate it, and then do the sponsorship deal.
So when you're putting the package together to approach a sponsor, you want to have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted, and you're the expert on that. What do people need to be mindful of? You have in your course, you do give templates, which is fantastic.
Yeah, we give templates, but I'll tell people what goes into the sponsorship proposal because you need that industry standard proposal. Without it, you will not get funded. So you need a description of what you do. Talk about your show. Talk about your nonprofit, your speaking, your book, your business, whatever is the entity that you're getting sponsored. Sponsor benefits. And remember, you need the right benefits. With podcasting, a lot of people say, well, I'll sell you a 30-second or a 60-second commercial. And that's really not the way to be successful because then it becomes all about your numbers. And unless you have these huge astronomical numbers of listeners, it ain't going to happen. So you want year-round benefits, which include email marketing, video, press releases, contests, spokesperson's benefits, social media award presentations, and all of the benefits I just told you about are very low cost, but they have a high perceived value to your sponsor. So that's the benefit section. The next section that you need, of course, is the demographics. Tell them all about your audience and especially the buying habits of that audience. And you want a marketing plan in there. How are you going to get the word out about what you do? And this is important because you can include the sponsors in your marketing. And then the last thing, and this is how we help people do sponsor proposals that nobody else does, is storytelling. I've put in my sponsor proposal that I was in an abusive relationship, that I was in the poverty trap. You don't just want to put what we call your pretty bio of your education and your accomplishments and all that stuff. You really want to get vulnerable and you'll either tell your story or the story of somebody that you've helped with the work that you do because we're all in different businesses, but we're all in the life-changing business.
Fantastic. My special guest on Guys Radio, Linda Hollander. She is the CEO of the Sponsor Concierge, and she is amazing. So thank you so much for being here. Um, let's see, what else can we talk about? How do we get media partners for our brands?
I think media is so important, and obviously you're in media, so you know what media can do for you. You get media partners in the same way that you get your corporate sponsors. You send them the same exact proposal. Let's say you want $25,000 from a media source, and I've gotten it from a radio show. I got wow, 30-second commercials. Speaking of commercials, on that radio station, 60-second commercials, sponsors, spotlights. I got presence on their website. Not a dime came out of my pocket. And it really helped me to get that kind of exposure. And you know what they wanted in return was they wanted a booth at my event because radio stations, terrestrial radio stations, have to be a part of the community to keep their license. So just kind of know that. So you'll get media sponsors in the exact same way that you get your corporates. The only thing is usually media is in kind and it's a trading of benefits and services.
Speaking of those benefits, what are some of the benefits that sponsors are really looking for? I mean, obviously, they want to sell product, they want to increase awareness, and they want to come across to the community and their consumers in a positive way. But do you find that there's more specifics that they're really looking for? Is it a quantitative measurement that they use when they're evaluating a potential somebody who's going to receive a sponsorship?
Well, the definition of sponsorship is connecting a company to people who buy things. That being said, there are tangibles and there are intangibles in sponsorships. So the tangible is things you can measure, like social media. You can measure likes and shares. You can measure unique visits to a website, things like that. But then there are intangibles like goodwill. And that's why sponsors during the pandemic gave a lot of money to nonprofits because they really wanted to build their image. They wanted to show that they're giving back to the community. They're not just bottom line profit driven. So goodwill is an intangible. So there's things you can measure and things that you cannot measure. Now let's talk for a minute about nonprofits. What you can do if you're a for-profit business is get a charitable partner, because that's what sponsors are looking for. Through you, if you give to a good cause, they get what's called the halo effect. So they look good. And that is what it's all about right now, is image advertising.
Mhm. Amazing. I guess renewal is a big issue also, because if you're fortunate enough and smart enough to land a sponsor, you're going to have a clock on it. How does the sponsor evaluate what's happened during the year, and how do you get them to kind of auto renew?
Okay, well, first of all, I want you to evaluate. I want you to be proactive and give sponsors what's called a renewal report or a fulfillment report. I like to give this to my sponsors every quarter at least. Now, on the fulfillment report, every time you do something to promote your sponsor, write it down, document with video, with photos, with all kinds of things, what you have done for your sponsor. And the fulfillment report could be a single page. So you send that to your sponsor. Now, you don't just email that to your contact in the sponsor world. You say, hey, can we have a quick chat and go over it? Because if you just email it to them, they could put it in the I'll read this later file, which becomes the I'll read this never
Ever.
file. So I want you to go over it with them. So those are formal sponsor relations that really encourage those juicy, delicious renewals. By the way, renewals are when a company funds you this year and the next year and the next year. Now, there's also informal relationships. So I had American Airlines as a sponsor, and I went on a radio show like this one, and I promoted them. And then I came back from the studio and I wrote a quick email to the lady at American Airlines. I said, hey, I just promoted you, and this station has 75,000 listeners. She emails me right back and says, thank you so much, Linda. And they renewed. So that's a way to informally have relationships with your sponsors, because they like those kind of touches. They like new information and they like to know what you're doing, because a lot of people will take sponsor money, they come back a year later, they put out their hand and say, give me more. And a sponsor's thinking like, well, what'd you do for me? Why would I give you more
Exactly.
money? You do not want that conversation to take place in your sponsor's head. You want them to know exactly what you're doing for them.
Now, there must be some type of norms that people on the corporate side deal with sponsorship requests all the time, and they can filter through and see that this person knows how to put a proposal together, this one doesn't. So if you get down to the point where they're really looking closely at you, they probably have a budget and different levels of the budget in terms of the type of brands or shows or whatever that they'd sponsor, the type of people they sponsor, and businesses, and how much they would allocate to that per annum. How do you kind of get into that the weeds there and determine how to ask for the right amount, not to undersell yourself and not to be too gluttony about it, too much gluttony?
The magic numbers, yes. Well, first of all, you have to ask. It's as simple as that. You have a few conversations with that person. Your first conversation, you don't even mention money. Sponsors have told me a lot of things in the last 20 years, and they think that that is too transactional. On your first conversation, or maybe the first two conversations, you just want to see if you're a good match for that sponsor and what they want to accomplish. Then you'll just kind of ask them, hey, when does your budget open up? What is your budget for sponsorships? And then you get down to the price of the deal. And unfortunately, there's no one size fits all answer to that question, because different companies have different budgets that open up at different times. Usually their fiscal year is the calendar year, but I worked with Microsoft as a sponsor. Their fiscal year starts in July and ends in June. So there's that too. So just get started whenever. People hear there's a sponsor season. More deals are done between September and November, but maybe 60% of the deals, that means 40% of the deals are done every other month of the year, and that we've helped clients get sponsors with every month. So don't really be concerned about the season.
Amazing. Linda Hollander is my guest here on Guys Radio, and she's so great. I'm taking notes as I'm interviewing her because even though I've taken her course, even though I sat in on a freebie that she did the other day, I just every time I hear her, I pick up some more information. So you have to check out Linda. So we just got a couple of minutes left at the end, and Linda's been so kind to and generous. I said, "How about give me a couple of pointers on air?" I always put it out here on air on Guys Radio. I have people do psychic readings of me or whatever. I put it out there. So I sent you my package. I've got a novel that was out a couple of years ago. I've got still it's selling through my podcast. I've got a podcast on 21 global platforms. It's in the top 100 in many international markets, in the top 200 here in its category. I've got the KCAA show, which is throughout Southern California, and I've got now a new growing YouTube channel. So I want to get a sponsor now. What do I need to do?
Combine everything into one brand, because I work with a lot of people like you, and they're authors and they have shows and they have, a lot of things that they do. If you present everything to the sponsor, sometimes it gets confusing and the confused mind says no. So figure out which one is your top entity. It's called a property for getting sponsors, probably your podcast and YouTube, I would say.
Yeah.
And then put everything else in the proposal, but don't throw everything at them, because a lot of sponsors say, oh my God, these people are so passionate and they've given me everything, but I'm confused, and I'm going to say no because I'm confused. So put it under one, what we call umbrella brand. For your book, the benefits could be you could do special printings of the book for your sponsors, or sticker the book, or put the sponsor in your resource guide for the book. For the show, you could have a slide before or after the show that promotes the sponsor. You could do sponsor spotlights and interviews, etc. There's so many things that you could do with all these different properties that you have.
Now, am I overdue for going after sponsors? It sounds like it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Get started. Like I said, hold your head up high. Just because you're getting started, just because you haven't worked with a sponsor yet, know that you can do this. And don't be intimidated because, oh, I'm just working in my kid's bedroom, or I'm just getting started and I don't really have a following yet. The following will come. You got to sell sponsors on the concept, and you have to have a big enough concept, a big enough dream that gets them excited.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you, Linda, for being on Guys Radio. Let's take a few minutes. I want to give you the floor. Tell everybody what they can get by listening and how they can get in touch with you and how they can take advantage of your courses.
Okay. Well, I have a free gift that I want to give everybody. If they go to successwithsponsors.com, they'll get the number one secret for getting sponsors. So that's successwithsponsors.com. Also, if they want to talk with me one-on-one, they could book a free sponsor strategy session there. And you've done a strategy session with me. I mean, it is magical. I will show you how to get money in ways you didn't even think of. And we do some amazing brainstorming. So just go to successwithsponsors.com and pick up the free special report, the number one secret for getting sponsors.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Linda, on Guys Radio. If you don't know it or not, you don't have to be a guy to be a guy's guy, and you've done a fantastic job. And thank you so much for being here.